Right now, Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys for our Major League Baseball update. Lots to get to with Ian, presented by Happy Hill Restaurant. Ian, how you doing, friend?
Hey, I'm doing well. How about you, Pat?
Good. You seem to be keeping busy, and of course, I'm not helping because I'm reaching out to you. And these last-minute questions, I forgot to put down the Baseball Hall of Fame nominations.
No problem.
But we got some big names out there, including Big Papi, A-Rod as well. Which of the nominees do you think will get in their first year of eligibility?
I think David Ortiz has the best chance. 286 average career, nearly 2,500 hits, over 500 home runs. I think viewed as one of the best hitters, certainly designated hitters of his era. There are a couple of things that might prevent him from getting in on the first ballot. Number one, that he mostly played designated hitter during his career, even though I think Frank Thomas essentially broke that barrier for Hall of Fame voting. I think some voters might hold that against him. And there is a little bit of whiff of PED suspicion with him. He was named in the Mitchell report years ago, I think in a New York Times report as well, as somebody linked to PED use, though that was never proven. He never failed a test. But I think that there are going to be some voters who I think hold that against him. So of all the first-timers, I would put David Ortiz at the top of that list. Alex Rodriguez, of course, if you look purely at his numbers, he would be a lock for the Hall of Fame. 295 average, over 3,000 hits, nearly 700 home runs. But, of course, he has the major stain of PED use, and he actually did get suspended when steroids were illegal in Major League Baseball. I think also there's just a general dislike of Alex Rodriguez. The thought that maybe, he's kind of a phony, that he was always chasing the money, even though many athletes do, of course, but so concerned about his image, orchestrating the trade from the Texas Rangers to the New York Yankees. Generally, I think unlikable, even though Alex Rodriguez, I think, tried really hard to be likable, at least in terms of his image. But I don't think there's any chance, especially with a couple of the other players down the ballot that we're going to mention. I don't think there's any chance Alex Rodriguez is going to get in on his first year on the ballot, let alone subsequent years.
Ooh, wow.
A couple other players that might be notable, Jimmy Rollins, 264 career average, 24, nearly 2,500 hits. But, was he seen as the best shortstop of his era? Only a 743 career OPS. Mark Teixeira didn't get 2,000 hits, but he did have 400 home runs. Ryan Howard, for a time, was seen, former MVP, one of the best sluggers of his era, but he declined fast in terms of his productivity. So there's plenty of very good names that are on the ballot for the first time. Carl Crawford, Jake Peavy, Justin Morneau, Prince Fielder, Tim Lincecum. But are they Hall of Famers? Probably not.
Yeah, agreed. I think they come up short of that standard. And by the way, with Bonds and Clemens, this is their 10th year of eligibility. For folks who may not remember, the Hall of Fame decided to not do the 15-year eligibility window. They cut it to 10. This is the final year of that. So I want to ask you, Ian, what chance do Bonds and Clemens have of getting in? When you look at, I think, maybe mid-50s, low 60s is the earliest or the highest they've come to getting that 75%.
Yeah, of the four players who are in their 10th year on the ballot, first of all, Sammy Sosa, no chance. 17% of the ballot, again, has the major taint of PED use on his career. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, neither cracked 62% of the vote last year, and I think they really needed to get close to 70 to have a chance in the 10th year on the ballot to make a jump from 62%, or again below 61.8, 61.6, to make that kind of jump from that percentage to the 75% required for induction is highly unlikely. So Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, most likely not going to get into the Hall of Fame in their final year of the ballot. I've said for many years, if I was a voter, I would vote for them, but I don't think that would matter. They're not going to get in. Now, Curt Schilling is an interesting case. He could get in. He was on 71% of the ballots last year, but he's also made a big stink about the fact that he thinks the voters are biased against him now. He petitioned, wrote a letter to the Hall of Fame to ask him to be taken off the ballot. The Hall of Fame declined that request politely. He might not get in, especially with a lot of the things he said, a lot of the insults he's leveled at voters and the media. Not exactly the people you want to tick off, the people who have to vote for you. But 71%, he does have a chance, I think, of making it in on his final year of the ballot.
All right. We will see where this one goes. Looking forward to it. And definitely, I think the voters have definitely taken a stance on steroids. If you're heavily suspected or you admit to it, good luck getting into the Hall of Fame. Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys on the D.C. Creasman Jewelers Wise Lines, our Major League Baseball update presented by Happy Hill Restaurant. All right, let's go to the field where the Mets pitcher Noah Syndergaard, he signs as a free agent to the Angels. We'll get more into free agency here in just a moment. And Ian, the Angels need pitching. So why did Syndergaard look at the Angels as a team that he can maybe win a championship with, or at least get his career back to where it was in the Big Apple?
First of all, the Angels were very aggressive right away. They showed interest as soon as he became a free agent. The general manager, Perry Manassian, was on a plane to New York to talk to Noah Syndergaard. As you said, the Angels really need pitching. They're adding Noah Syndergaard to a rotation topped by Shohei Ohtani. And then they have about 3 or 4 young pitchers, all of whom are good, but unproven at this point. Luis Suarez, Jose Barria, Reed Detmers is one of their top prospects, Patrick Sandoval. I think the Angels are going to try maybe to pursue one more veteran starter. Probably not one of the top names, but maybe take a chance on a guy like a Noah Syndergaard, who at one point was one of the best pitchers in baseball until he needed Tommy John surgery after the 2019 season. Missed all of 2020. Why didn't he sign with the Mets? I think most people thought he would. I think the Mets believed they would sign him and maybe took that for granted a little bit. Noah Syndergaard has been pretty outspoken, saying that the Mets did not communicate with him, well, very little, if at all, for the final 2 months that he was with the team. I think he also had some questions about the stability of the team. They were looking for a general manager, whom they just hired in Billy Epler. They still need a field manager. Meanwhile, the Angels have a stable situation with Manassian as the general manager, Joe Madden as manager, and he gets a chance to play for an outstanding offense with Shohei Ohtani. Mike Trout will be coming back, Anthony Rendon as well. So both teams kind of taking a chance on each other, but this could work out really well.
Boy, no kidding. Yeah, I mean, with his signing, and where does that put the Angels in 22 in terms of the division title?
I think you still have to put the Houston Astros as the heavy favorite in the AL West, but the Oakland Athletics are going to take a step back. We'll see in the offseason here if they're going to trade some of their top players, Matt Chapman, Matt Olson. Seattle, what are they going to do in the offseason? They're on the verge of making the playoffs, but I think the gap between the Angels and the Mariners isn't very large, and the Angels could overtake them. And then you have the Texas Rangers who just aren't very good. So the Angels could make a playoff push, maybe not for the division title, but certainly for a wild card.
Gotcha on that. We'll get to the Angels, or rather to the Rangers in just a moment, but we still go down to Texas where the Astros have re-upped with Justin Verlander. What was that deal, like $25 million, Ian?
1 year, $25 million, but a second-year option for an additional $25 million. And I think that may have been the difference between Verlander re-signing with the Astros, who are a familiar team. He felt indebted to them. He feels they revived his career. Of course, he also won a World Series there. The Yankees also offered him 1 year, $25 million, but weren't willing to go for that second-year option. And, of course, it's worth noting, Justin Verlander, he's going to be 39 years old next year, and for a second-year option, if that gets picked up, he's going to be 40 years old. So I think a little bit old for the Yankees to take a chance on. I know the Tigers, many of their fans were hoping, there would be a reunion between the Detroit Tigers and Justin Verlander, but I think they were looking at the same thing, especially being kind of a rebuilding team, maybe a young contender next season, but to spend $25 to $50 million on a 39-year-old pitcher, I think they were much happier, much more secure with going 5 years, $77 million for Eduardo Rodriguez instead.
Yeah, indeed. And I was going to ask, how much does the future Hall of Famer have in the tank? And, you're 39, there's not as much left there, but he's a crafty guy. There's no doubt about that.
When he worked out for teams, he was throwing at 94 to 97 miles per hour. About 15 to 20 teams watched him. Reportedly, 5 teams were interested. But if he does come back strong, I mean, the Astros, they were in the World Series. If they'd had a healthy Justin Verlander, maybe that would have been the difference against the Atlanta Braves in the World Series. They should have a very strong rotation next season.
All right, watch for the Astros, and that AL West looks like it's going to be more interesting next year as well. Speaking of staying in that division, Ian, the Rangers extend the contract of manager Chris Woodward through 2023, and Ian, he's 160 and 224 since taking over the team in 2018, and those numbers can get some managers fired. So, what do Rangers execs see on Woodward to extend him?
The Rangers are rebuilding. I think Chris Woodward is just kind of there because they're like, well, we could bring in another manager, but he's probably not going to win either because we're rebuilding and there's not a whole lot of talent. If they also make a managerial change, I think that also increases the scrutiny on general manager John Daniels and Chris Young is the general manager there now, but John Daniels is president of baseball operations. Hasn't really done a good job of adding to the young talent, of bolstering the farm system there. And if they make a managerial change, I think that points out that John Daniels hasn't done a very good job either. So I think this is a situation where they're like, well, we might as well just keep him around, see how it goes for another couple of years. Hopefully the talent level increases and they contend. Also, I think this is a situation where they didn't want Chris Woodward to go into next season with that being the final year of his contract and avoiding that so-called lame duck status. Gotcha. So we'll see what the Rangers are mentioned for some bigger names in free agency. Can they persuade Clayton Kershaw to come home to Texas and pitch the end of his career there? Are they going to chase one of the big shortstops like Corey Seager or Trevor Story?
And by the way, speaking of extensions, the Red Sox did the same for Alex Cora, right?
That's right. They picked up, he had 2 option years on his contract for 2023 and 2024. So basically a 3-year or a 2-year extension on top of the final year of his contract that he already had. But Alex Cora, he's been phenomenally successful as Red Sox manager, won the World Series in 2018, took the Red Sox to the wild card. They led the AL East for a big chunk of the season. They also beat the Rays in the divisional series. Alex Cora, all you have to know about how the Red Sox feel about Alex Cora is that they fired him and then they brought him back after, he served his 1-year sentence, if you want to call it that, for his role in the Astros sign stealing scandal.
All right, so those teams got their managers locked up. Now let's talk about free agency. The Angels with Syndergaard, the Blue Jays seem to have been early on pretty active. Which other teams have gotten a head start on free agency signings?
Yeah, I mentioned the Tigers with Eduardo Rodriguez. A lot of people in the baseball industry think they're going to make a big run at Carlos Correa, the top position player available. I don't think Correa is going to sign before December 2nd, but maybe he will. But is there going to be a free agent frenzy between now and next Thursday, not Thanksgiving, but December 2nd? We'll see. You mentioned the Blue Jays. They signed Jose Barrios to a 7-year deal. He had 1 more arbitration season remaining, but they locked up an ace young pitcher for another 7 years. The Dodgers signed Andrew Heaney, who was a good pitcher for the Angels last year. It's actually a big loss for the Angels, but a good addition for the Dodgers, who really need to bolster that back end, that middle to back end of their starting rotation. The Dodgers had Andrew Heaney. Maybe they would have had a better chance against the Braves in the National League Championship Series. And speaking of the Braves, they also fortified their catching position. They signed Manny Pena to a 2-year, $8 million contract.
How long do you think it'll take? Speaking of the Braves, it looks like these negotiations with Freddie Freeman are going to be dragged out a little bit. When do you think that may hopefully be locked up?
Yeah, it's possible he signs before December 2nd. If he doesn't really have any ambitions to sign anywhere else, and unless the Braves play games and try to lowball him, which they really shouldn't, not just because Freddie Freeman is their best offensive player, but he's extremely popular with fans. I think that would be a really bad message to send to fans. So I think Freddie Freeman, it's possible he does sign before this reported lockout on December 2nd. But I haven't heard any movement as far as a contract getting done, unfortunately. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of urgency right now to get that deal done, even though that would be obviously a tremendous loss for the Atlanta Braves.
Oh, my God. That might be the second time Atlanta's burned down if that happens. As Ian Castleberry joins the Wise Guys presented by our friends at Happy Hill Restaurant. It is our Major League Baseball update for this Monday. You mentioned a couple of named players on the free agency market. Which other named players are still out there, Ian?
Well, basically everybody. If you look at like the top 10 to top 15 free agents available, none of the really big names have signed. There have been some big moves, as we just mentioned. For Carlos Correa, the top position player, top shortstop available, he's still out there. Really all of the shortstops, Corey Seager, Trevor Story, Marcus Semien, Javier Baez are all still on the market. Among starting pitchers, Max Scherzer is still out there. I think he's going to sign a shorter-term deal, much like Justin Verlander. He's a little bit older, but he showed that he's still an excellent pitcher. 15-4 last year, 236 strikeouts. And he was even better during his short stint with the Dodgers, 7-0, 1.98 ERA. I think he should have won the National League Cy Young Award, even though he didn't. Other names that are out there: Chris Bryant, Robbie Ray, a top pitcher in the American League.